That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, getting us started on today's edition of Tall Tales. Good afternoon. I'm Daryl Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, who will be back in 18 days. Yeah, 18 days, from 2 weeks from next Monday. Bob will be back right here in this chair, and we'll all be enjoying his perspectives on the goings-on in our community. Until then, I'll be with you. I'll be with you until 6 o'clock this evening, and we'll take a look at what's going on and listen in for your phone calls and also your comments on Facebook Live. You can join us there. You can call us at 888-8255. To get us started on the Second Amendment, I wanted to point out to you something. It's in the PDN on page 13 today. And this is an advertisement from Bargain Tactical. And this is what it looks like. It looks like a pistol with a holster and two loads. That's the pistol plus holster plus 2 loads. It says, safe to own, legal to carry, and easy to use. Taser, Pulse Plus Combo. So Pulse Kit holster, 2-pack of cartridges on sale now. No license required to own. Of course, they also have guns, ammo, knives, tactical clothing, archery, camping gear, self-defense, and home security. Now, I'm not huckstering for them, but I'm just, when you look at the ad, you go, okay, I can buy a gun. It's going to do just what it'll only do them one at a time, but it'll do it, and it is safe to own, legal to carry, and easy to use. Not the same as a firearm. I'm not saying that it's an equivalent, but in some people's minds, this might be a non-firearm alternative to having a firearm that you can have concealed carry, and you want to do somebody in. You have something you can do them in with. And I'm not suggesting it as an alternative. But if you can get something like this without having to go register, without having to go down to GPD, record and ID division down there at the ITC first floor, you just go pick it up and carry it. And so it's another way of appreciating how easy it is. I mean, you don't have to go out and get a Saturday night special. You know, it's easy to get firearm. If you wanted to carry something, you could get it. And if somebody wanted to carry something and have a degree of force available at a moment's notice, it can be had, and it wouldn't even be a firearm. My comments really, it doesn't sound like it, but I'm actually kind of pointing out the futility of trying to regulate guns, since you can go ahead and get something else legally. Anyway, so that, I just caught that, and it's like, okay, it looks like the top of the ad says safe to own, legal to carry, and easy to use, but it looks like a gun. So anyway, that's that. Now for Zami Ikatni. Okay. What a way to start. For Zami Ikatni, as of yesterday, September 18th, the tally was Guam Daily Post 141, PDN 53. Let's see if we can tip that balance a little bit. It's not even a balance, but let's see if we can address that imbalance a little bit with today's stories, editorials. Guam Daily Post editorial is entitled, Gov Guam Keeps Skimming Workers' Tax Payments. And the Pacific Daily News is saying a smaller GovGuam. Well, you know, it sounds like these two are kind of in the running, neck and neck with each other, wouldn't you think? Two great topics. Thank you so much for chiming in here, because by PDN writing a local editorial and Guam Daily Post, of course, you do, and on a really good topic. And so let's go ahead and start with Guam Daily Post, and let's consider this. Guam Daily Post says, GovGuam keeps skimming workers' tax payments. The practice in past gubernatorial administrations of maintaining what's euphemistically called, quote, net payroll, when the government of Guam doesn't actually pay, as it is required to do, the taxes and other items deducted from employees' paychecks, has repeated at Guam Memorial Hospital as recently as all of last year. Although GMH has been assessed $8.7 million in unpaid taxes and penalties for not remitting withholding tax payments that were already deducted from GMH employees' paychecks. Altogether, GMH has been assessed. Not all, though. Altogether, GMH has been assessed $8.7 million for not remitting withholding tax payments that were already deducted from GMH employees' paychecks. This is money coming out of the employee's own paycheck, the taxes they were paying. GMH failed to make the required payments to revenue tax in the final quarter of 2014, the first, second, and third quarters of 2015, the final quarter of 2017, and throughout 2018. This took place during Governor Eddie Calvo's administration. The Leon Guerrero administration asserts this problem isn't happening under its watch. Still, the $8.7 million debt has been kicked over to the new administration. On Wednesday, GMH Chief Financial Officer Benita Manglotnia was let go. She was the hospital's chief financial officer in most of the years these withholding tax payments weren't remitted. When asked for Manglotnia's explanation, GMH's months-old chief executive officer, Lillian Perez Posadas, said, quote, I don't want to dwell on that. Going forward is what I want to focus on. It's not about dwelling on a problem. There needs to be an explanation to the public and an attempt to get some form of accountability. Did Manglotnia act alone? Did she do so at the direction from or with cooperation of the Calvo administration's fiscal team, former GMH CEO Peter John Camacho, and ultimately Governor Calvo and Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio? Chances are Manglotnia didn't act alone. The new administration asked Manglotnia to stay in the interim, even after the change of administration. So to let go of her now seems to be an attempt to brush aside this systemic problem. This isn't the first time GovGuam has failed to remit payroll-deducted money that it's legally obligated to hand off to the appropriate entity. Past gubernatorial administrations and certain other agencies have withheld the remittance of retirement contributions from the Government of Guam Retirement Fund. Certain GovGuam employees' paycheck-deductible loan payments have also been delayed in prior years. The practice of skimming employees' tax payments and retirement payments keeps repeating because the only consequence of note has been for a GovGuam entity to enter into an installment plan to pay what's owed. We don't recall anyone being prosecuted for it. And when these GovGuam debts get so big that installment plans are no longer sustainable, GovGuam borrows the money, resulting in double jeopardy to taxpayers. These are things GovGuam can do to avoid a repeat of this problem. GovGuam can trim its payroll to a level that won't force it to skip legally obligated payments. In GMH's case, the core issue is for the public hospital to reevaluate its workforce numbers and costs. While it must fill medically necessary vacated positions for nurses, physicians, and other key medical staff, the size and justification for its sizable administrative pool needs a thorough and honest review. GMH and its board need to figure out whether keeping the status quo is more important than keeping the lights on, elevators working for patients, its roof from leaking, and making payments to medical suppliers. Wow. And these are the kinds of editorials we need to see every day until this stuff stops. It's good. From GovGuam wide skimming to specific GMH practices and remedies. I heard Ray Gibson and Michael Knight this morning question why Reverend Tax in the legislature did not detect this. Legislative Health Committee Chairwoman Therese Terlahi asked yesterday why this was not brought up in briefings or the budget request. I wonder, why was this not picked up by auditors? Auditors! I mean, that's what auditors do. Finger-pointing of the current administration is a distraction away from two more important concerns to us. Us, you and me. It was not either administration's money, but our money and the money of the employees that would have increased prior year revenues and been spent on public needs other than the hospital. And the responsibility of both past and current administration is to uphold applicable law. So let's get this straight. $5.8 million in revenue is what was shorted over the balances of the past couple of years. That's money that did not get into Reverend Tax. Should have. But was not. And both the Calvo administration and the current administration, their job is to enforce the law that applies to cases like this. I mean, don't we have an elected attorney general supposed to look at this and go, was a law broken here? Is there a law that even applies to it? Maybe there isn't a law that applies to it. You can just go ahead and do this any old time because it's not prosecutable. It's not even worth an investigation. Don't we deserve to know that? Does the governor's organic authority over health extend to suspending withholding tax procedures by employers? Are we so self-insured that we can... let me just continue. I'm just ranting here. Had a private payroll vendor, let's say GMH had a private payroll vendor, and if it did not pay the withholding tax to Reverend Tax at the time it was paying, preparing the check runs, it would be up for criminal charges, or it would be compelled to be witness to anybody within GMH who failed to provide the sufficient funds to cover all payroll costs. Thank you. It's just a reminder, folks.
It's 420.
It's 420. Okay, so thank you, Real Joe. We want to be, this is timely information. This is information that our listeners can use. It's a service to the community that we have started here on Tall Tales. It's not a tall tale. It's a feature of the daily clock. If we were doing this at 4:20 in the morning, you'd hear it then. But it's not. It is 4:20 on the 12-hour clock. And so, it's like a starting gun. It's like a call to the post. It's like, it's like what? What else do we do here? It's like the, time to go to Fox News. It's just one of those things that has to do with, what do you do at the time? When the clock strikes 12, it's at midnight. You change the date. You don't look at that old date anymore. You look at a new date. Well, it's 4:20, folks. Okay, so while you are acting appropriately, I'll continue. When the Post suggests double jeopardy for taxpayers if GovGuam borrows this money, in fact, it's already double jeopardy. We, the people, are filling this shortfall, not GMH. we're the ones that are going to pay for this. GMH isn't going to pay it. They're not going to take it out of their revenues. It's the legislature is going to take money that would have gone to something else, or maybe even the hospital itself this year. They spent it, and we are going to divert more than $5.8 million from some other use to cover this. Even if they just go ahead and don't penalize, if they waive the penalty like they've done with other taxpayers who've shorted us. And here's another point that I need to make here, and you need to understand this. When they spent that $5.8 million, these funds were not spent as authorized or appropriated by law. They were not authorized to spend that money by law. These funds were not obtained. They were not their revenues. They were not spent according to law. And I agree. This is not the time for dwelling on a problem. I totally agree with Lillian Perez Posadas. She doesn't want to dwell on that. Going forward is what I want to focus on. That's the direct quote in the paper. I agree. It's time to enforce applicable law, lest this practice continue. And this example is referred to as just another normal discretionary practice by our political leaders and their appointees who are acting in our name, who are there doing what we told them to go do. We elected them to go in and do this. And they appointed people to do what needed to be done. They're acting in our name, the new normal, if we don't get a prosecution out of this. An investigation and prosecution and shut the barn door. It's going to keep happening. Just as I have on the ready the list of roadways where flooding continues or safe travel might be reduced to one lane. I'm going to keep this so every day we get a good inch or so of rain, I'm going to read it out. Because these problems are not going away unless somebody gets out there and does the job. And I'm not talking about you or me unless you are on the payroll and your job description includes addressing this. And I sure hope I'm talking to somebody who's supposed to be doing their work. They're listening to the radio instead. They want to hear what I have to say. Us taxpayers expect them to uphold their oath of office, first off, and the oath they took and the job description they agreed to when they took on the appointed jobs. And that includes the Attorney General, it includes the administrators at GMH, it includes the Governor of Guam. Anything less is they're just thumbing their nose at us. And it becomes the new normal. I'm going to keep reminding. Okay, so that's what happened to my blood pressure when I read the Guam Daily Post editorial today. GovGuam keeps skimming workers' tax payments. It's not the first time, and it will not be the last unless we actually have some performance out of our governor and the administrators of the hospital. Specifically there, generally everywhere. And I see the phone is ringing. We've got about 4 minutes before we go to the next item, before we go to a break, and then we still have another editorial to read and comment on here on Tall Tales for Zami Ikatni. What do you know? Let's go ahead and hear from Ken between now and the bottom of the hour. Ken, you got yourself kind of jammed in here with about 3.5 minutes to go for the break. But welcome to Tall Tales.
Well, I was just wanted to follow up on your discussion there about the fact that not only the payroll issue, but it affects also vendor deductions like life insurance and mortgage payments and things like that as well. when they hold back. But one of the things that I'm really concerned about in this issue is that it keeps happening over and over and over again. And if we look back at CLTC as a perfect example of a bad example, we can't trust the government to police themselves in matters like this. And that's why I'm working on a Corrupt Practices Act for voter initiative, so that citizens, once these things become discovered, we can do the legal actions that government will refuse to do.
You know, I thought that was the reason why the elected Attorney General was requested of the Congress and then approved as a change to the Organic Act. Isn't this your recollection?
That was my recollection as well, but we've not seen any effort by the government to take the initiative. Look at when you and I filed complaints against the legislature. I took it up to the Attorney General's office, and I was told that the Attorney General's office represents the government, and only the government can bring cases to the Attorney General's office for review. Well, you know.
Yeah, well, and in this case, who would they represent? The people?
Yeah.
Or are they going to represent, well, the hospital has its own attorney, but if he's going to represent the governor, and the governor has power, the organic powers over health, which include the activities of the administrators and board at GMH, then he's in a position to stand there and be ready for to defend against a lawsuit.
Yeah.
And so what do we need to do? Bring in the feds on this?
No, that's why I want to separate the Attorney General's office into the Attorney General, who represents the government of Guam, and a prosecutor, an island prosecutor. Whose job is to prosecute anyone, including the government. And you see, if we have a prosecutor that's elected by the people, and let the Attorney General be appointed by the governor, because even with the current Attorney General, all we're seeing is that they're subservient to Adelup anyway. So let's make that an appointed position and shift the election to a island prosecutor.
Is that part of your proposal? Is it out yet? It's not out yet.
Yeah, that's part of the proposal for the voter initiative.
And where is that draft?
I'm still working on it. I'm
okay.
taking my time on it because I want to make sure I do it right and have minimal reason for the election commission to deny it.
No. Well, that's something we're looking forward to, because it sounds like a solution compared to the action we have so far. Let's fire Benita. let's fire Benita, and that'll take care of it. But no,
but that's the problem with it, because going back to a professional like Benita, you and I both agree she's a very professional person, right?
Yes.
Well, I find it hard to believe that she woke up one morning and said, "Oh, I've got a great idea. I'm going to put all the payroll withholdings under my mattress, and I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm going to hide it in the audit reports as vendor payable."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why, when I looked at the audit reports, I didn't see anything about that. So I talked with the Office of Public Accountability, and he tells me that it's in vendor payables, And so I had a discussion with him about, what we need to do is we need to have some kind of ruling from the Office of Public Accountability that says anything like this needs to be line item in an audit report, so that policymakers and the public don't get blindsided.
Well,
by this.
How could the Department of Revenue and Taxation be considered a vendor? I mean, I think they violated the definition right in there. Why would it?
Well, you see, that's where we have to go back to the Corrupt Practices Act, because this comes under the category of official misconduct. But I, as a citizen, the way the laws are now, cannot bring official misconduct charges against any government official. But
Yep.
if we get the Corrupt Practices Act passed, then citizens will be able to bring actions against any government official for violation of law, policy, or procedure that costs taxpayers money.
Okay.
And this is costing taxpayers money.
First things first. I'm going to go do a break, and you're going to go finish that draft.
Okay.
Okay? I'm looking forward to it. Please, let's hammer that thing out and put it on the table for everyone to see. Thank you, Ken, for the call.
We'll get that out soon.
Good. Looking forward to it. And
I'm watching.
You are? Oh, yeah.
Watching your show.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in and for watching on Facebook Live. That's Ken Leon Guerrero, the other Governor Leon Guerrero at 4:32. Time to take a break here at the bottom of the hour, and we'll come back with more Tall Tales and the other editorial for today.
We understand what matters to you because at Docomo Pacific, we're a family too. With the Now Family program, mom, dad, and kids stay connected on the latest devices the whole family can enjoy. For just $155 a month, get 3 lines with 30 gigs of 4G LTE data each, and endless use of your favorite apps without affecting your monthly data bucket. Add more, get more, save more. Docomo Pacific, better together. Some conditions apply.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
If you've struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon and for visiting us on Facebook Live. I see Chris Chip is with us, and my blushing bride says she is watching me. That's all right. I'm here. Chris Chip says, so where did the money go? And why has it taken so long to find out if this money has not been paid? Where did the money go? It went to whatever it was that GMH is spending money on. It just went to their cash balance of what was available to do whatever GMH does. And they didn't, but it's revenues that they were not authorized to have. Because only part of that money was coming out of GMH's pocket. The withholding taxes are coming out of the employees' pockets. That is the big deal. Where did it go? It just went to whatever it is they wanted to spend money on. And Chris Chip says, we are sure it stayed in GMH? Well, I would imagine that the OPA would find it. But that's something that's why we need attorneys to track that thing down and go, well, where did it go? And that's one of the problems with GMH is it's got this sort of it's almost like the general fund, right? It has its own revenues, and it has money. It has its own revenues. It has its own board to determine how the revenues are going to be split between operational costs and capital costs and contracts and various ways that the money can be spent. And then they still go down to the legislature and put tens of millions of dollars of revenue, of a budget request. And there is... It would take somebody who is qualified as a forensic accountant to untangle all this. But it's a public agency, and who is going to perform that function if our own government does not perform the function for us? And it might be that we need to have the feds step in and do this. The tax laws administered by Rev and Tax are delegated by federal law. And the way I understand it is that just about everything the government of Guam does, it does pursuant to federal law, because the Organic Act is a federal law. And so there is no federal state demarcation. They do so as a matter of policy, federal policy, not to involve itself in matters of local import. And that we understand if it's something like the prosecution of somebody doing a crime that doesn't involve there's no federal law against it, right? But not remitting withholding tax to the agency that is deputized by federal law to administer tax laws in the territory, and withholding taxes that are collected pursuant to federal law. That's not a local law. The local tax code is not a local law. It's a delegated federal law to administer. And if they're not faithfully administering, I think it's time for the feds to step in and whack somebody. Just my opinion. But thank you, Chris, for that, for your comments on Facebook Live. And let's go on to the other editorial, which is enticing. It's called A Smaller Gov Guam. This is Pacific Daily News today on page 20. Expanding island's government hurts entire community. Our island's leaders seem determined to maintain or expand a bloated, costly government of Guam to the detriment of this community. Governor Lulian Guerrero has said that the business privilege tax rate of 5% should be permanent unless another source of about $58 million in revenue is found, even though the increased tax rate was meant to be temporary. Federal tax reform implemented by the Trump administration translated into a decrease in Gov Guam revenues. The tax increase was supposed to last just until elected officials cut the cost of government operations. But the higher tax rate was extended for fiscal 2019 and has been maintained. No effort has been made to reduce the size and cost of Gov Guam, leaving island consumers to shoulder the burden of a higher cost of living. Leon Guerrero in January separated the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission from the Department of Land Management. Now, Senator Will Castro wants to establish an Office of Homeland Security. Then Governor Felix P. Camacho established Guam Homeland Security through an April 21, 2003 executive order to coordinate and facilitate all government of Guam, military and federal liaison response agencies, and their resources in response to or in preparation for all types of emergencies such as terrorism and violence. Why is this needed? The offices of Homeland Security and Civil Defense have been doing their jobs. There doesn't seem to be a point to splitting the two agencies. Will this mean additional costs, more staff, different offices? When this government needs to see a reduction in government agencies and measures taken to cut government spending, elected officials are instead looking to create a more cumbersome, bigger government. We need a smaller government. One is much more efficient and costs us less of our tax money. If that is achieved, it will allow elected officials to roll back the 25% increase to the rate of the business privilege tax from 5% to 4%. And that will directly result in a drop in prices for groceries, transportation, retail goods, and services. So says the editor of The Pacific Daily News, in their editorial today, a smaller GovGuam expanding island's government hurts entire community. Again, if you'd like to jump in on this discussion, please do. 888-8255, or you can make your comments on Facebook Live. Happy to bring your comments in on the from the screen here. But this is what my reaction was when I read this. Good on every example cited and point made until the last sentence. The whole thing, until the last sentence. Of the many benefits to rolling back the business privilege tax, rolling back prices is not one of them. I, your host, am willing to risk being proved wrong, not by anecdotal stories of price reductions, no different than the usual, quote, sale to attract shoppers on a budget, but significant percentage reductions on prices for goods and services that are as widespread and diverse throughout this economy as the prosperous businesses that are paying business privilege taxes. Managers of these companies simply have no incentive to reduce prices when customers are willing to pay the prices now, and the only serious price competition is coming from online sales. Besides, the intended impact of the tax cut was to stimulate companies to hire more employees or give raises to their employees. It's too bad that PDN could not stick to the well-supported point. The government cost-cutting method was spelled out in the very public law that raised the BPT. GovGuam can cut $58 million from the GovGuam budget every year. I mean, if they were to follow the procedure that was laid out in the very same law that raised the BPT, they would cut the cost of GovGuam $58 million a year, not just in 1 year. It's going forward $58 million a year. That's what we're talking about. Also, it would force our leaders to examine the purpose and value of GovGuam agencies to the public. Aside from the career employment value and benefit to the employees. As a separate matter, what is it worth to us that this money would be spent? It would also modernize GovGuam. It would modernize it. Because in order to achieve the $58 million in savings, GovGuam-wide, you would make the government more efficient. Use the same employees to get more done. We might not have to have the $58 million, lose the $58 million. Or it may be that we come up with $58 million in savings. But whatever we save, it would directly stimulate the economy of Guam, not GovGuam, but the economy of Guam by that amount. That's the reason we want the tax rollback. It's not going to reduce prices. There's no reason for business managers to cut prices. And so, between these two editorials, I'm going to have to award the coveted blue star to the Guam Daily Post. GovGuam keeps skimming workers' tax payments. That's right. There we go. That is what we say today. PDN, I think if you didn't put that last daft line in there, I could have given both of you a star. But that last bottom line comment was just so far off the mark, and you should know by now. At least here on Tall Tales, where our analysis runs. And so, got a call on line 1. Domingo, welcome to Tall Tales.
Off day, Daryl.
How's the day?
First, I want to thank you for carrying the torch while Bob is away, because I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, obviously, that a lot of callers, a lot of listeners agree that these are changing times, but yet our government is not changing with the times.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been discussion before, which I think that we should revisit, where we should really reconsider the BBT and also the link to the federal income tax code. You know that I've been a proponent for flat income tax, and now we should consider if or at the very least a study be done by BBMR to see if going with a sales tax as opposed to a BBT tax would be prudent, because right now you know that people are complaining that since the BBT went up, the price of everything went up.
Mm-hmm.
But if we put the tax on the sales of certain goods, and then hopefully that the cost of goods such as food and the bare necessities will hopefully stay consistent.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It is the method that governments use to go to on paper compare one, to get a revenue neutral option for the type of taxes it's collecting, and it is actually a procedure that's already on the books. There's already the organization for studying our tax laws is already written up. I don't have it right in front of me, but you're absolutely right. This is 10 years ago, 20 years ago, this stuff already has been talked about, and you're right. There is no reason not to do this. They just have to sit down and do it. And if they do it, they will come up with, if they want to do it, if they want to come up with reasons not to do it, they'll come up with reasons not to do it. But if they want to come up with reasons to do it, they can do it. And
like I said, that I challenge this administration, because one of the things that I am disheartened by what's going on is I hear nothing about all of these executives getting raises, and yet across the board, everyone is at a hiring freeze. I am a teacher. I'm a teacher at a school, and because of the cutbacks, our increments are frozen. But yet here are these newly appointed executives getting all of these benefits and increases, and they have yet to prove themselves. So what is the logic there?
Well, you sound like a man that's got your head screwed on straight.
So I'm just curious,
you and the rest of us are going, wow, it's probably a good thing for them that they gave all those raises out before they did the hiring freeze and announced austerity.
Right. So again, that since, as the statement from the hospital director has said, that let's not dwell on the past, but let's move forward. Okay, moving forward, I challenge the administration. Do something that will generate a revenue that would, at the very least, that would support what they are spending, because right now I believe the spending is out of control.
It is out of control. It seems to. I'm not. There's ways that I could characterize the way that spending continues. That doesn't seem to be logical to us, which means it must be logical to someone else for very good reasons. But they're not our priorities. They are their priorities. And that's why we have this dissonance between what's happening and what we're thinking of. And so I really want to thank you for your call today, Domingo. Call back again sometime, and we will, let's see if anything happens. Your challenge has been put, and I think that everyone should actually adopt that challenge and put it to our elected leaders when and wherever you see them. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Howard. Take care.
And you too, Domingo. Thanks for the call. 4:51 and time to take a break here. We'll come back on the other side with more Tall Tales.
Chili's Guam invites you to our new location, now open on the second floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. For the past 10 years, we have made Guam our home and celebrated moments with our familia and friends. From birthdays to first dates, anniversaries, and everything else in between. We're keeping it going with our new location where you can hang out with family and friends over fajitas, burgers, ribs, and margaritas. Treat yourself to an elevated guest experience at Chili's like no place else. Now open on the second floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, new location, same bold flavors.
Looking to relocate your business? Prime Space is available at the Camacho Landmark Center at the intersection of Marine Corps Drive and Chalon San Antonio, next to Personal Finance Center. Located in central Tamuning, close to the airport, hotels, major shopping, restaurants, financial institutions, the hospital, clinics, schools, and GovGuam and federal agencies. Your business can experience the benefits of this first-class commercial facility. Join other successful Guam businesses who have moved to this modern multi-purpose commercial center. Call Carlos Camacho, 300-7744 for more information.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome back to Tall Tales. We've got about 6.5 minutes to go here before the top of the hour. We'll have Fox News at the top of the hour and our thrilling halftime show. Stay tuned for that, and then we'll come back with more Tall Tales after 5 o'clock, when all the folks who are just getting out of work can join us then. Taking a look at the comments online, Sherry Iriarte is saying, "Afternoon, Daryl, listening on the radio." Thank you. I know a lot of people are listening on the radio. I know that when I'm home, I generally don't log in on my phone or on my computer. I'm moving around the house, I'm moving around the yard. I've got all the radios on, and I'm listening to the conversation and listening to the information that I'm getting. But welcome, Sherry. And Nate Horn says, "I'd love to know if one single person was laid off due to government cuts, if any." You know, Nate, and it doesn't even have to be cuts. It could be attrition. And I think that's where they implied that they would be reducing the cost of government by not filling positions. But their sincerity rings kind of hollow when they gave themselves all raises first. And let's see, Chris Chip, I think he's talking about the topic that Domingo brought up about changing the tax code. He said option is correct. Andrew Camacho says former Senator Forbes advocated a reduction in government by natural attrition. This and consolidating services would go a long way to saving a lot of money. You know, Andrew, you're right. That was boldly put out there by former Speaker Mark Forbes. And it was proposed, but the committees did not, that have oversight on the agencies, did not identify the areas where the cuts could be made. This was during the Camacho administration with a Republican governor and a Republican majority legislature. It was a perfect opportunity to do this. I was in the legislature at the time as an analyst for the Committee on Aviation, headed by former Senator Jesse Lujan. And we saw this opportunity, but there was little effort or stomach for digging down into the functions of the government of Guam to find those that could be phased out, even over a period of time. We saw that there was a lot of federal money coming in and GovGuam money being used for maintenance of effort. And say an agency is funded 50% by the feds, and Guam would put in 50% for employees or maybe for vehicles, you know, whatever the split was, because it's different from program to program. But a lot of this was going on. It takes a lot of digging down into the weeds to make it happen. But there has to be, at the end of the day, the political will to bring it out on in the public eye, debate it, and implement it at the legislature through the budget process. Now, when the BPT was increased back a couple of legislatures ago, or the last legislature, but before fiscal 19, they were supposed to cut the budget because Senator Frank Ogden introduced tacked onto that BPT increase on the floor of the legislature the method for reducing the cost of the government of Guam. And it was a systematic review that the governor could propose to the legislature. And if you recall, back in the beginning of this year when I was sitting here for Bob Klitzkie, I was talking about how I'm waiting to see the governor's budget request and any changes to be made in the summer, supplemental or a revised request, because it should have included the implementation of the BPT increase law, the method to reduce the cost of the government of Guam. And we rolled right through this year for the fiscal 2020 budget without ever looking, without any mention of this. Ken Leon Guerrero says high salaries to reward politically well-connected insiders first, and their attitude about the rest of us can best be summed up in this. And then he gives a YouTube reference. So you could go on Facebook Live and pull down the reference and cut and paste it into your browser and find that. Thank you, Ken. It's 4:58. It's about time. I'm not going to get into something new before we go on to what we have after the top of the hour. We'll get into the spending at the 75th Liberation Fair, and also the public response to the dengue fever outbreak, and talk a little bit about Dr. Stadler and some other things going on in our community, such as the upcoming election for leadership positions in the Democratic Party of Guam and jobs and ROTA. So do stay tuned. Come back after the top of the hour. We'll be here for another hour on Tall Tales and taking your calls at 888-8255 and reading your comments out from Facebook Live here on The Point.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Red-faced over brown-face. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau embarrassed and apologetic over an 18-year-old photograph that Time published on Wednesday showing him in a turban and wearing brown-face makeup. It was from an Arabian Nights-themed gala at the private school where he taught at the time. Trudeau now says it was a mistake, it was racist, and he shouldn't have done it.
I have worked all my life to try and create opportunities for people to fight against racism and intolerance, and I can just stand here and say that I made a mistake when I was younger.
He would not say if he'd resign or end the re-election campaign that he just started a week ago. President Trump says he's making good on his promise to build the wall, visiting an area on the U.S. southern border yesterday where replacement wall sections are going up.
It's a combination of steel, concrete, and as one of the folks just said, it really is virtually impenetrable.
The president says there could be close to 500 miles of wall built by the end of next year. At the request of Border Patrol agents, he signed one of those sections. California promising to fight back after the president tears up a waiver that had allowed the state to set its own automobile emission standards higher than the federal mandates. California's Attorney General Javier Becerra considering a lawsuit.
We cannot afford to backslide in our battle against climate change. For us, this is about survival. Our communities are screaming for help. to address the climate crisis. Unlike the Trump administration, we don't run scared.
UN weapons inspectors on their way to Saudi Arabia to look at the fragments of the bombs used to attack a Saudi oil refinery over the weekend. The French foreign minister says the claim that Houthi rebels in Yemen staged the attack just isn't credible. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo Wednesday called the attack an act of war for which he believes Iran is responsible. America is listening to Fox News.
Chili's Guam invites you to our new location, now open on the second floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. For the past 10 years, we have made Guam our home and celebrated moments with our familia and friends. From birthdays to first dates, anniversaries, and everything else in between. We're keeping it going with our new location where you can hang out with family and friends over fajitas, burgers, ribs, and margaritas. Treat yourself to an elevated guest experience at Chili's like no place else. Now open on the second floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, new location, same bold flavors.
Connecticut water treatment customers don't keep coming back. They're satisfied the first time. That's right. Connecticut non-electric water treatment systems take care of your water problems, and you won't need to keep calling us for repairs. Join the list of satisfied Connecticut customers who purchased their non-electric water systems years ago and are still enjoying clean, conditioned water without any hassles from timers or circuit boards.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
20 people are reported dead, as many as 90 hurt in a truck bomb explosion in the Zabul province in southern Afghanistan. The Taliban claiming responsibility, saying they were targeting a nearby government intelligence building. The Federal Reserve Board, as expected, lowering interest rates on Wednesday.
The central bank cutting interest rates by a 1/4 percentage point for the second time in as many months to a range of 1.75 to 2%. The move is expected to shave borrowing costs on credit cards, home equity loans, adjustable rate mortgages, and auto loans. Reducing rates impacts the bond market, which means mortgage rates will come down. But if you're a saver, you'll likely see less money in your money market funds. Basically, lower rates help people and businesses who borrow and tend to hurt people who save. And if you have credit card debt, you'll get some relief, but not much, with your monthly bill reduced by only a couple bucks. Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
Parents of a 12-year-old New York girl are suing e-cigarette maker Juul, claiming their daughter got hooked on nicotine because of the company's mango-flavored vaping products. This is a new study says more teens are using e-cigarettes.
About 25% of high school seniors said they vaped nicotine in the previous month, up from about 21% the year before. That's according to a new study from the University of Michigan. Researchers surveyed more than 42,000 students across the country in grades 8, 10, and 12. It also found cigarette smoking declined in high school seniors from about 8% to 6%. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reporting at least 380 vaping-related illnesses and at least 7 people have died. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
It's been closed for 3 years, but the Washington Monument will reopen to the public later today. The building closed in September of 2016 to replace the elevator and upgrade security systems. Washington Monument averages about 500,000 visitors every year. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Calaguan Hapa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
Are you ready for some football? The Ray Gibson Show has got your NFL fix every Friday on Sports with Blake. Get the latest updates as Blake and Mike break down the upcoming action. Get your game on with the boys on the hotline, 888-TALK, or sound off on Facebook Live at thepoint.gu. League members get a chance to win some awesome prizes that get you through the NFL season. The NFL Picks on The Ray Gibson Show is brought to you by Current Guam with special thanks to GTA.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm Daryl Taggerty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, who is off island. He will be back in 18 days. 18 days. So Monday, 2 weeks from this coming Monday, we'll be once again enjoying Bob Klitzkie right here from 4 until 6 on The Point on his program, Tall Tales. Yeah, this is fun, though. I want to do something that's not so fun. Sad to say that we see in the paper today that Dr. James Statler has passed away in Hawaii. There's an article on page 8 of the PDN today. I know there's another one in the Guam Daily Post, but this one in the PDN has a quotation that I want to read as for those of us who have known and have come to know him and respect him for his personal and his professional presence in our lives here on Guam. We have our own way of remembering him and praying for him. But for those of you who don't know him, and where we all meet is in the public commons. This was a statement that he made at a 2018 legislative hearing on the decades-old controversies surrounding Guam Memorial Hospital. This is out of the PDN article on page 8 today. Statler took issue with the costly renovations of the facilities being considered, saying, quote, "And yet we will still, at best, have a newly renovated but 40-year-old hospital." Quote, "When one takes into account patient safety and the need to modernize the hospital, I think that the very best long-term solution is to build a new, structurally sound, state-of-the-art hospital." End quote. Statler said. Dr. James Statler. And we'll have more, you'll see more about the opportunities to pay respects and to join together in prayer for him. We remember him here on Tall Tales. Yeah, he's the pediatrician who delivered my stepdaughter. And did a great job at it. We'll get to the dengue fever in just a moment. I was reading a message online about school where my elder son is attending, Notre Dame High School, and a note from the principal about what's going on down there as far as their preparations, how seriously they're taking it, as a place where students from all over the island come together for the purposes of education. And I am reassured by her, by what she said. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but first, let's take a look for a moment at the report that has been issued by the Mayor's Council, or the committee that on the 75th Liberation spending. September 18 was the deadline set by Public Auditor B.J. Cruz, so they can begin the audit required by law. Sanahanya Mayor Robert Hoffman, member of the Planning Committee for the 75th Liberation Day, said there's a deficit of about $157,036, but the committee had yet to share its profit and loss statement as of the time when this was written, in time for today's paper. And preliminary data from the committee shows that funds from carnival concessions alone and from games of chance vendors and others reached $427,804. And when you go to the article that was in by Jerry Partido on PNC News First, It's dated today, so I guess it was in time for today's news. 75th Liberation Celebration posts deficit, entertainment costs high. The biggest cost, entertainment costs, accounted for a significant amount of the total cost, according to Mayor's Council President Melissa Savaris. And it's not just that entertainment costs were higher, but because it was the 75th anniversary, there were simply more expenses spent because the scale of the celebration was bigger to commemorate the 75th year milestone. That's a comment I'd like to hear more about. How could it have cost more simply because it was 75 years, but it was not because of... But if you read elsewhere in the article, and PDN's article, they're talking about the cost of entertainment. That they kicked out the jams on entertainment because it's the 75th anniversary. Well, you know. And most proceeds from Liberation Queens Committee was transferred to the Guam Island Fair to help pay down vendors. I'm going to, I don't mean to say I told you so, but, when we were talking about the bill to authorize casino gambling at the carnival, to pay for expenses, the justification was they needed the money to have the celebration. And my take on it was, if they didn't have the Guam Island Fair, where the casino would be running and the other games and whatnot, and the entertainment, then the cost of the parade and the Queen's pageant and stuff like that would be a different and more manageable number. And there are proceeds from the Queen candidates that could have continued on, and there were expenses for having the pageant and all that stuff. Great. But did we really have to have all the expenses of the Guam Island Fair when it's not really an island fair anymore? And so if we could have the OPA kind of break that out into two separate items so that we could see what was the cost of the parade and the Queens as a separate, completely separate matter from having the carnival. Because I'll tell you what, besides that we are on the hook for $157,000 as of the current count, besides that, casino gambling has been permitted once again by law, by this legislature. And that concerns me more than the $157,000. Because if we could generate $427,804 from vendors, then they're pulling a lot of money in from the community, of which that is just a percentage. It's a 5% or a 10%. So we're talking about $4 million or $8 million for games of chance and food vendors who actually they already have food vendors over at Chamorro Village, not needed on the carnival grounds. $8 million, whatever the percentage was, and we still had the costs of the revenue tax employees. Who's bearing those costs? And is this net of those costs? It's not clear. All this stuff needs to be sorted out. And I hope that we get another... Well, if it doesn't happen in the next 2 weeks, I'm sure Bob Klitzkie will get into it when it resurfaces. Let me just make a note of this because I want to add this to the list of things to talk about in the near future. So that's, that has to do with changing the whole way that we authorize casino gambling. After 20 years of wrangling back and forth about this stuff, it's going to come up again. It came up again. It was reversed. So now we have the casino gambling again, which just keeps the issue alive after we've already had a vote on it. So let's take a look at the dengue fever story. It's pretty interesting. KUAM last night put out a story. Julius Santos reported about a press conference yesterday conducted by Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. And it had the representatives from all partnering departments and agencies working together to mitigate the spread of dengue. Public Health, U.S. Centers for Disease Control, Guam Homeland Security, Office of Civil Defense, Guam EPA, Mayor Melissa Savares, and Guam Department of Education Superintendent John Fernandez. So these, besides the governor herself, sitting at the table for the press conference. And this was yesterday. And you may recall, was it yesterday or the day before, that there was an editorial that was well written, presented about how the information wasn't coming out from the administration. But when I looked back, something I didn't find over the weekend I should have brought in on Monday was that Luella Lucinio, writing for PNC News First on Sunday, so it would have been in Monday morning's news first thing. Her story, Public Health Activates Dengue Response Plan, identifies 82 homes within 200-meter radius of confirmed case, has almost all the information that has been dribbling out over the past several days. That is very curious. I'm not sure whether Luella got out and did top-notch journalism work over the weekend and got all the information that was available over the weekend that had been done. I'm happy to see that there was an immediate response. But the public has not been informed by the other media besides PNC News First of the extent, the depth, the detail. And that really concerns me. I don't mean to dump on reporters, but because this was a public response, and if Luella could have gotten that information herself by digging around asking, then the agency should have, as soon as Luella called and got that information for herself individually, those individual contacts should have put their head together and put out the very same information in time for Monday morning so that everyone had it and not allowed it to drip out and then have a press conference on Wednesday to finish putting this stuff out. Not only did they not do it on Friday so that the people of Guam would have actionable information over a weekend, but we would all be involved. It didn't happen. It just really, really, it doesn't smell right when this is the way that our government operates. It doesn't sound very coordinated. It is coordinated, I'm happy to see. It is coordinated. Public Health really did do what needed to be done. This is what was the report on Monday morning on PNC that was not included in anything else until the press conference yesterday. Public Health Director Linda DeNorsi said the department immediately activated its arboviral disease response plan, which included establishing a command post and enhancing surveillance for dengue fever. DeNorsi also wants to do vector control by fumigating areas that have a risk for mosquito transmission. Quote, we are also updating our dengue case management. We are going to do a massive education for patients and the community to present breeding grounds of the mosquito. And in the article, she puts out, she also includes that a physician's alert has been disseminated. And this was as of Sunday. PNC News First. I don't think they have a newscast, but it was filed Sunday online and available for Monday morning's newscast. So what they put was specific information from Centers for Disease Control and Prevention about the Aedes albopictus mosquito. And it's important for residents to remember the 4 Ds of mosquito prevention: drain, dress, defend, and dusk and dawn. Avoid activity during times when mosquitoes are most active, dusk and dawn. It's not carried by anybody else, but it's part of the public education effort of this dengue fever response. I'm happy for the response. I'm not happy with the quality of the reporting. And I, for myself, I'm sorry I did not see this article and bring it in on Monday afternoon. I would have been comparing it with the coverage by other media. And so, thank you, Luella Lucinio of PNC News First. I've had the pleasure of sitting down and talking with her about some really difficult, arcane, lots of weeds topics. And she was able to handle it well and distill it down to a way that the public could understand. And I was grateful to her for that, because she was much better at it than I could be. And so let's go ahead and whatever you're seeing in the news about dengue fever, take it seriously, because there's a reason why dengue fever is besides the pain and suffering of those who get it. But if it becomes endemic on Guam, in the mosquitoes that are in our community, then we are exposed to a number of other similar viruses that can be carried by the same mosquito, that can be planted through bioterrorism. That is one of the reasons why these arboviruses are so important to stamp out. It's actually a matter of national security for a place like Guam. The last time Guam had a dengue fever epidemic was during the Japanese time, 1941 to 1944. And it ended in 44 because the United States government, military, when they landed in 1944, they made sure that they eradicated the mosquitoes that were carrying dengue fever on Guam. They made sure that it was stamped out. And so they may have to do this again now. I remember that Operation New Life, they did that. They made sure that dengue fever did not get a toehold in on Guam. In 2019, arbovirus spread by mosquitoes, the same class of disease as dengue fever, are bioterrorism threats. So that's why I wanted to bring that to you. 526. Again, our telephone number here, if you want to pipe in and make comments, 888-8255, or you can go on Facebook Live and offer your comments. Let's see. Prudencio Meno says dengue epidemic would greatly impact tourism and population. That's right. If we had dengue here, what's going to happen to our tourism? You know, I can't imagine a Smokey Joe on the back of a Jeep rolling through Tumon at dusk. I mean, of course, I've seen it in the past. You know, Smokey Joe on the back of a Jeep rolling through Tumon when San Vitores Road was just a sandy trail. I remember that real well, back in '65. Andrew Camacho says, is aerial spraying an option as it was in the past? Good question. It may not be because of tighter environmental regulations. And I don't know if those regulations actually reach all the way out here to Guam because of the political status of Guam being perhaps outside the reach of the law or regulation. Or it might be that those regulations have been lifted or compromised somewhat through the current administration, as they have been rolling regulations back, environmental regulations back. But I do recall that at Operation New Life, they sprayed this island at treetop level with planes that were specifically brought in to do the spraying. And they sprayed, and the main justification for it was dengue fever. And by doing so, they wiped out the insects right away, and that was in the spring. And you may recall me saying, it was after that spraying. Hang on a second. A little dry throat here. Excuse me. So it was after that spraying that we lost our birds. The bird population just disappeared. A matter of weeks and months after that. A couple of years on some species. And some bees were almost completely eradicated. The only place, especially paper wasps, the small brown ones and the big yellow ones that are just all golden. Not the ones that Eddie Cruz had posted on his Facebook page this morning, but all gold, beautiful, big paper wasps. And if you got stung by them, they weren't as bad as the small boony bees. But those bees had been eradicated in most places on the civilian side until Tiedzin was turned over to civilian use in 1995, and also the areas in the base housing up at Anderson. Those two places that I personally have seen the bees and then watched them come out from those areas. But I don't know about Big Navy. But those areas had been spared from the aerial spraying. It's 5:30. Let's take our 7th inning stretch here, and we'll come back on the other side with more Tall Tales.
Chili's Guam invites you to our new location, now open on the 2nd floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. For the past 10 years, we have made Guam our home and celebrated moments with our familia and friends. From birthdays to first dates, anniversaries, and everything else in between. We're keeping it going with our new location where you can hang out with family and friends over fajitas, burgers, ribs, and margaritas. Treat yourself to an elevated guest experience at Chili's like no place else. Now open on the 2nd floor of Tumon Sands Plaza. Chili's, new location, same bold flavors.
Name the industry that after 150 years of small improvements but nothing spectacular and highly profitable doing business that way, thank you, now has some very different competition. And things could be changing. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, I'll tell you what industry that is. And oh yeah, you probably use its products every day.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Welcome back to Tall Tales. I'm Daryl Taggarty, and we've got another half hour together, a little less, 27 minutes or so. And so let's see what else is on our list. Ray Gibson calls it his table of contents, and Bob Klitzkie calls it the card. And I've got the way I put it is my lineup. I've got a number of things here to talk with you about, and I'll just kind of mention them, not in passing, but sort of bring them up, and we may be circling around to them a little in future shows. Before I do, Andrew Camacho says he's ready for the dengue fever epidemic, a one-way ticket to Arizona. Just don't take any mosquitoes with you, Andrew. But you know what? You can say this in a poem. Can't you? You do. You do so well. So we'll be looking for it could become, his poem could become a lyrics to a new song about how we're, waiting for the next mosquito to bite, and what will happen with the mosquitoes that bite us this evening, and how we're going to be watching the tally of dengue fever cases, say every Tuesday or every Friday for the next couple of months, and measure the effectiveness of local and federal authorities to this. Ken Leon Guerrero, the other Governor Leon Guerrero, had in the Daily Post today a column, a letter to the editor, entitled "The Decolonization Hoax." And I was a bit too foggy-minded over the past, 10, 12 hours to rebut this or to respond to this specifically, but I want to. I think it's a really good learning, teaching moment. So I'm going to take this back, and I'm going to bring it back forward to you. Perhaps Ken and I will sit down and talk about this. However we do this, it's a good starting point. So if you haven't seen it yet, turn to page 18 of the Guam Daily Post today and take a look at that article, and then we will talk about this in the days to come. Well, I've got somebody calling up on line 1, and I wonder if they're going to talk about the Democratic Party of Guam elections coming up in October. Is that what you're calling about? Caller on line 1, welcome to Tall Tales.
About dengue fever.
Dengue fever? You don't have it, do you?
Yeah.
You have it?
I think the mayors have the solution. Now, the mayor spent $60,000 to go to the Philippines to study strawberries. So maybe the mayors could spend maybe $100,000 to go to the Philippines and study dengue fever.
Well, as long as they don't bring it back,
They will have the same conclusion, resolution as the Strawberry Festival did.
You're absolutely right.
And
Thank you.
It only cost just a little bit more.
And it would be something that is on our minds too. They would be responding to our concerns.
Yeah, and the mayors make some money too. And our taxes will go up again.
Well, I think they ought to just go ahead and use their budget. If they need to go back for, they need to travel, then they should take it out of the funds that they've already got to address the stray dog population.
Where did their funds come from?
From the appropriation of the legislature. Yeah.
Where does their funds come from?
From us.
My pocket, your pocket?
Absolutely. All together now, we pay our taxes, and we get a government that has that's adequately funded to address our needs.
Well, you know that old joke?
What's that?
Guam has the best government money can buy.
Yeah. And we're the ones paying for it. That's one of the reasons why we have this radio show.
You
Yes.
to complain about Gov Guam corruption and greed.
And what's the solution? Come on. Besides complaining, you must have identified a solution.
Well, it depends on how much funds will you allot me.
You know what? We got taken that way in the last election. And
education.
because
Education is a solution. But these people find it very difficult to learn anything new other than their party system, their nepotism system, other than their buddy system. So, on an island with a population of 1/3 is Filipino, and if you look at the Philippines in the corruption index, it's like 143. So, I don't know the solution other than just, if you don't want to live under a corrupt system, you should probably just leave.
Well, you know, I'm reminded that when we talk about political status, this is that the civilian population on Guam is allowed to it's organized and allowed to be on Naval Station Guam by a federal law. Congress allows us to be here and form a community.
Well, you're changing the subject. I was talking about Guam corruption.
That's right.
You
But
want to talk about the naval base? Okay, well, go on and talk about the naval base and how bad, whatever it is.
I'm saying that there is that when you say leave
corruption on Guam.
That's right. There is corruption on Guam, and that corruption, there is a way to address it.
The bottom.
And there is a way to address it, and that is by invoking the ultimate federal law, because the government of Guam is a federal instrument.
So what is the ultimate federal law against corruption?
FBI. FBI investigation.
Yeah, that's what that woman, she got raped by a policeman. She didn't call GPD. She called the FBI.
Well, you know, and they may say, you know.
She knew that. Yeah, of course.
But it's probably a good move, since it was an official of the government of Guam.
Since the rapist cop got arrested and put in jail, or maybe he came before Judge Anita Sokola and didn't get put in jail.
Yeah, we've been watching.
Like all the other ones that come before her. Oh, felon on felony release, felon on felony release. Gov Guam employee selling ice. Oh, go before Judge Anita Sokola. Oh, well, community service. No jail time. No jail time. No jail time.
Yeah.
Gov Guam employees selling ice. Read the newspaper. You like to read the newspaper.
Well, you know, I don't like the stories, but I read it because I have to stay up on what's going on. Otherwise, I have this big hole in my understanding. I'm happy. I'm happier when I don't. You know.
Well,
you know, Jimmy.
Yeah, I guess that's your business.
I thank you for your call today. I appreciate you calling in and reminding us of some of this stuff, because we need to be reminded. We need to keep these issues right in front of us as we're looking at solutions. And so I want to thank you for your comments today.
Your preposition, looking at or for solutions.
We're looking for them, but I don't want to be that far away. I think the solutions are right in front of our eyes.
Preposition.
But it's looking at the solution.
No, we're not looking at any solutions.
We're not?
We're not. I don't see any solutions. We are still looking for solutions to the corruption in Gov Guam.
I thought I just proposed one, which is the FBI, to have federal investigation of these activities that are happening in the government of Guam, which is operating pursuant to federal law, and that's looking at a solution.
Hey, can the FBI investigate the Guamanian Homeland Security that received ICE at the Homeland Security Office?
They can, because Homeland Security is funded by the U.S. government.
Yeah, but he was working for Homeland Security, and he received a packet of ICE at the Homeland Security Office. You need to read the newspaper.
No, I do. But that means that there were two federal laws that were violated. One was the mails, and the other one was that he received it in a facility that is funded by the United States government.
Office.
Yes, it's funded by the U.S. government. A grant. There's a grant that supports that activity and pays his salary, which means that the U.S. government has jurisdiction over crimes committed on that space. It's not a matter of local concern if the feds want to step in. That's my understanding, and when Bob gets back, he can talk about this.
Now, you're changing. Okay, I'll go with you. You want to change the subject. On this plebiscite.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they got the plebiscite. They want to be independent. They want to be a state, which is not possible. Guam will never be a state. You say it'll be a county of Hawaii, and that's about laughable. Or why not just make Guam a territory of the Philippines?
Well, the Philippines would have to be consulted.
Or you could also have status quo. That way, all these lazy Guamanians could still get their food stamps.
Oh, they could get it under the Hawaii County, or you could even under independence, if there was a GovGuam program, they could have food stamps. I'm sorry?
How are they going to get food stamps under independence?
Oh, if there's a revenue for the bases, like some kind of payments in lieu of taxes for the land that the bases are sitting on, that funds the government of Guam, and the government of Guam has a mirror program that it administers locally, that it issues the food stamps, which are now done electronically.
The only people that would benefit from that were the GovGuam employees. The local people that do not work for GovGuam wouldn't get it. It's the same with GURA. You want to apply for GURA? Have you ever tried to apply for GURA housing?
No, I haven't. No.
I have. Have you ever applied for a federally funded job at the bell tower down in Antigua?
No, I haven't.
I have.
Mm-hmm.
I've got letters of rejection because I'm not the right race.
Well, then that would be a matter of concern to federal authorities. That's where they should be stepping in if that's the case.
So you say that the federal. So you want Guam to be under federal rule?
It is under federal rule. If we have the change of political status, then it would have a local government that is of the people, and then that government would have a relationship with the United States, whether it's a treaty relationship or a political subdivision relationship. No.
That seems to be what we have now.
The government of Guam is a federal instrumentality. It is created pursuant to federal law. If the law was amended or repealed, then we would all be living on Naval Station Guam, and we would be
We're talking about history and
no. This is status quo political status now. The government of Guam is created by federal law, and it has been amended over the years to remove certain features like appointed governorship and whatnot. It has been amended by Congress. We do not amend our own government. We did not establish it, and the government of the United States has never recognized the right of anyone to live on this island. They only have organized the government for us to have a way to organize ourselves within this space. But it is not a government of Guam. It is a federal government of Guam. Jimmy?
You must forgive me, but you are talking like a former Gov Guam employee.
Not only a former government of Guam employee, but an employee who has worked for as a technical researcher and writer at the legislature, at Adelup, and for the congressional offices. I've been there. I have done that. And I've done deep digging and deep reading and deep speaking about all of this matter. And we're still in the same spot we were in 40 years ago. So, but Jimmy, let's...
ask one question. What is the solution to the corruption in Gov Guam?
FBI investigation under federal corruption, under federal corruption rules. That is where we should be going. That is going to help get the government of Guam back on a instead of an unrestrained political priority, it would be straightforward administration of taxes. We got to take a break here. Jimmy, thank you very much for the call. We got a caller on line 2 holding on. I'll come to you in just a few moments after this break.
Looking to relocate your business? Prime Space is available at the Camacho Landmark Center at the intersection of Marine Corps Drive and Chalon, San Antonio, next to Personal Finance Center. Located in central Tamuning, close to the airport, hotels, major shopping, restaurants, financial institutions, the hospital, clinics, schools, and GovGuam and federal agencies. Your business can experience the benefits of this first-class commercial facility. Join other successful Guam businesses who have moved to this modern multi-purpose commercial center. Call Carlos Camacho, 300-7744 for more information.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
And welcome back to the last 10 minutes of Tall Tales, taking a look at the comments on Facebook Live before we go to Anthony on line 2. Let's see. Ken Leon Guerrero says, for those of you who don't have a copy of the Guam Daily Post, his column on the decolonization hoax is online at www.guamc4pa.org or on Facebook at Guam C, the letter C, the number 4, and the letters P and A. Guam C4PA.org or Facebook Guam C4PA. Andrew Camacho took my challenge on expressing himself in poetic meter, and he says, we can't use a sharp cleaver, but maybe a skilled weaver can help us veto that pesky mosquito and eliminate dengue fever. Did I do that right? Cold read. We can't use a sharp cleaver, or maybe a skilled weaver. Oh, I'm sorry. We can't use a sharp cleaver, but maybe a skilled weaver can help us veto that pesky mosquito and eliminate dengue fever. A skilled weaver. Think we got one? Or a team of them? And then Ken Leon Guerrero says, what payment are we getting from the utilities in lieu of taxes? Let's think about that one. Anthony, welcome to Tall Tales.
Hey, Alfred.
Half a day.
No, that guy, what's his name, is Jimmy, the one that's just talking for a long time?
Yep.
Yeah, he applied for this, he applied for that, he don't qualify. So, maybe he's well-to-do. But when he talks about Guamanian, it has to be distinguished between Guamanian and Chamorro.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be synonymous. If you're Guamanian, you're a Chamorro. But now somebody changed the definition, and if you stay in Guam, you're Guamanian. You got to remember, the Chamorro and Guam are maybe only 1/4 of what's here in Guam now. We're not the only ones. Chamorros are not hogging entitlements. But the thing is, it's in the best interest of the United States government to keep the people of Guam hungry. Because if not, we can dictate what we want to do. Somebody did a study on if the military were just to pay per square meter, the military or the federal government, just to pay per square meter of property that they took from the Chamorro. No, somewhere around $5 billion a year, we could make every Guamanian millionaires. But they don't want it to be like that. But so he was talking about, he was complaining about, here on Guam they're looking for handouts. That's what the federal government like. Look for handouts, and then if you don't do what they like, they cut it off. And then we go running back. Say, okay. We're not going to challenge it. And then the handouts start coming. I grew up at a time where we feed ourselves. We find a way to feed ourselves. My dad always insists. I mean, there were food stamps. This was in the late 70s. Mm-hmm. And during that time, my parents split up, and my mom went. She got a boyfriend and followed him to the U.S. My dad, we take care of us. There's 11 of us. My dad take care of us. He had to go on food stamps until we were using food stamps, and then when he got a raise at his job, which of course is the Naval Civil Service. Mm-hmm. And he saw that there's enough money to what do you call that, stand up. Mm-hmm. He told the food stamp people, okay, I don't need it no more, go help somebody else. That's the attitude that I grew up in, and that's the attitude of a lot of us older ones. I'm in my 60s now.
You sound, just take a moment here, and I'm listening to you, and you sound like you're one of my first cousins. And we're about the same age, too. We came up the same time. We remember Typhoon Karen. We remember how it was when we used to recycle, when we didn't have to be told to do it. We just did it. And then we've seen the changes over the island, and you do remember the older generation and their bitterness over the land takings and the court case. Yeah. And we saw the way that every time we thought that we were going to get it together and make our community just thrive in a way that we were going to design ourselves, something else would come in and just slam us, knock us off level. Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, Guam being a state, he said Guam will never be a state. Of course we could be. We don't have any raw exports. Guess what we have? We've got tourism and we've got enjoyment for visitors, right? And that's big money compared to digging stuff out of the ground. Well, they didn't. It's not about the money. We can do it. We've got a lot of locals that are, and not just tomorrow, but even one that make Guam their home. They're PhDs. They're lawyers. We didn't never had that before. Right. And the thing is, the one that Ken said that it was he didn't really like that conference. I agree with him, because all they did was brought in all these countries that are still colonized. I wish they brought in countries that were colonized and then became sovereign, and we listen to them how they did it, and not these ones that come in and say, okay, we're waiting. Guam took it to the Supreme Court. Let's see what happens with Guam, then we follow. So they're looking at Guam to see where they're, I just went like this, and I go, they're very well spoken. They got PhDs. They're lawyers and everything like that, but they're losers. They come and we just hear and haw about being colonized. They don't provide no solution. What we're going to do? Thank you. Good summary. Yeah. So I got plenty more to say, but I know you probably want to move to
some other speaker. I'll be calling back.
Please do, because actually we only have a couple minutes left in today's show. I would love to have you call earlier in the show, and we'll just go through some of this, because your perspective is shared by thousands. But it's not polite to be saying these things. It's not us to be coming out and just venting our frustration in this manner. And you know what I'm talking about.
The thing that really puts it out is when our governor asked the military, can you pause a little bit and we'll see what we're going to do about this rare plant? The commander was nothing to the governor. Oh, the governor, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah, it was just...
In the U.S., my brother made Texas his home. He told me, Ton, if a troop make an error downtown, the commander's, the next morning is straight down to the governor's office to apologize. Here, the commander rule, not the governor, and I don't like them treating our governor like that.
But also, our elected officials need to be smarter at this.
Yeah,
they need to sit back and examine just exactly what makes these people tick, and play to win, and pick their battles carefully, but we need to make some progress on these fronts. Yeah. And so you see it, I see it, and it's so funny that our leaders are playing to what's apparently a different audience, because they're not really appealing to us, you and I. Right. Anthony, so much for the call.
I hesitate to call them leaders. They're just...
oh, they're not leaders.
Popular vote getters.
Yeah.
There are a few leaders down there, but they're the minimum. And when they try to put something up, you need the majority of the 15 to get your. That's right. Your effort going through. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll talk to you again soon, Anthony. Thank you very much for the call.
Bye.
Bye-bye. 5:59. Time to go. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I'm Darrell Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie. We'll be back in 18 days. I'll be back at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon for more Tall Tales. Ray Gibson will be here in this chair at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, so tune in for him then. In the meantime, the sun is out. Have a beautiful evening, everyone.
The Point is KUSG.